Hi, I'm your friend Claude. Although, you might not want us to be friends for very much longer after you watch this video. Yesterday was March 4th, 2022, which means that the new movie, The Batman, was released widely in theaters across the country. Now, a lot of people seem to have been saying that they have already seen this movie as early as March 1st. I went on opening day last night, and it seems I was still late to the party. And I've got to say that The Batman, it very much plays like an extension of the Nolan movies, in my opinion. It has a similar tone, similar fighting style, similar approach to the depiction of the villains. It even reuses the Carmine Falcone character along with the corrupt cop and judges dynamic that we've seen in the Nolan films. It kind of feels like a cross between an unofficial fourth Nolan movie at times and a flat-out remake of The Dark Knight at other times. It even balances multiple villains the way that film did. Speaking of the villains, I hated the portrayal of the Riddler in this movie. I thought he looked very generic. The costume was basically army surplus gear. It didn't have any of the style that we know the Riddler to have. He was far too brutal for the Riddler. He was more like an S&M jigsaw, channeling Ledger's Joker via the Zodiac Killer. Despite the hype about all the detective work that we were going to see Batman doing in this movie, I feel like it still lacks in any real mystery solving and true detective work. In many cases, Batman still just kind of waltzes into the room and solves all the riddles within 30 seconds. And any of the ones that he has trouble with, he basically just farms them out to other people. They show Alfred working on a few, and he sends Catwoman in to uncover any of the remaining clues that he hasn't had yet. Speaking of Batman himself, for me, Pattinson is not effective as either identity in his dual role. He's much more Batmanican than Batman. And he's kind of just lumbering around like RoboCop, trying to go incognito in bad cosplay. His Bruce Wayne is little more than a human husk who just kind of exists to mope blankly. It's just really weird to me. The film itself is rather moody and brooding, but it doesn't really build very well to its moments of actual intended emotion. The scenes that were meant to be impactful, they just kind of fell flat for me. In the screening I went to, those moments were often repeatedly inducing laughter in my fellow audience. It's not a great sign. Now granted, a lot of that audience were fidgety teenage boys, but I digress. And speaking of laugh-inducing moments, the film makes a weird choice to have Batman repeatedly make his entrance on screen by doing this weird, slow march from 20 feet off camera, back in the shadows. It comes off like cowboy Darth Vader strutting into town. You could almost hear the heavy breathing, and all that seemed to be missing were the sound effects of spurs over his footsteps. Aside from Batman, the acting talent in the main cast was pretty effective. Commissioner Gordon was really well played, and Zoe Kravitz as Selina Kyle on Catwoman was pulled off really well, both in fight choreography and balancing both of her roles, even though there wasn't much difference between them. Now, Andy Serkis as Alfred, however, was virtually pointless. Both the usage of the Alfred character and his portrayal itself, it was just sort of nothing. And I'm tired of this Bruce Wayne resents Alfred dynamic. I want to see a movie where Alfred is just a pure, trusted ally. And while we're talking about Alfred, why is it that every Batman movie seems to hate Alfred's mustache? I think they need to let it grow on him in a way that I just don't see this movie growing on me. I think that's going to wrap it up for me today. That's my quick initial reaction to seeing The Batman. Overall, I've got to go with a rather stiff score, 5.5 out of 10. You can find the Nerd Bomber podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, or any of your favorite podcast apps. Follow us on just about any platform you can imagine at Nerd Bomber Pod. Until next time, I've been your friend Claude. Aloha.